In a big, noisy city filled with tall buildings and busy streets, there lived a man named Harold. Harold wasn't rich or famous. He didn't have fancy clothes or a shiny car. In fact, most people didn't even notice him. Every morning he woke up early, put on his faded blue uniform, and went to work at St. Mary's Hospital. His job was simple but important. He cleaned the floors, emptied trash cans, and fixed things that broke around the hospital. To everyone else, Harold was just the janitor. But Harold didn't mind being invisible. He had grown used to it over the years. Harold's life was predictable. He would arrive at the hospital by 6 a.m., start his rounds in the quiet hallways before the doctors and nurses arrived, and finish his shift late in the afternoon. Sometimes, if he worked overtime, he'd stay until nightfall when the hospital grew quieter. During those calm hours, Harold liked to listen to the hum of machines, watch the way sunlight filtered through the windows, and think about the past. Once upon a time, Harold had dreams, big dreams. When he was younger, he wanted to be a doctor, or maybe even a scientist who discovered new things about space. He loved reading books about stars and planets, imagining what it would feel like to float among them. But life hadn't been kind to Harold. His family was poor, and after his father passed away unexpectedly, Harold had to drop out of school to take care of his mother and younger siblings. Those dreams of becoming someone important slowly slipped away as reality took hold. Instead of studying medicine or exploring galaxies, Harold spent his days sweeping floors and fixing leaky pipes. Still, Harold found small joys in his routine. He enjoyed the peacefulness of the hospital corridors during the early mornings when no one else was around. He liked how the polished tiles reflected the soft glow of the overhead lights. He appreciated the rare moments when someone, a nurse rushing between patients or a doctor finishing their rounds, would stop to say thank you for keeping everything tidy. It wasn't much, but it made Harold feel like he mattered, even if only a little bit. One thing Harold loved most about his job was watching the seasons change from inside the hospital. From the large windows in the lobby, he could see snow falling gently in winter, cherry blossoms blooming in spring, and golden leaves swirling in autumn. Each season brought its own beauty, and Harold never missed a chance to admire it. Even though he rarely left the hospital grounds, these glimpses of nature reminded him that the world outside was still alive and vibrant. Despite all this, Harold sometimes wondered if his life had any real meaning. Sure, he kept the hospital clean, but did anyone really notice? Did his work make a difference? These thoughts often crept into his mind during long nights when the building was silent except for the occasional beep of a machine or the distant murmur of voices. On those nights, Harold would sit on a bench near the entrance, sipping coffee from a thermos, and stare out at the city lights. He felt small compared to the towering skyscrapers and endless streams of cars speeding by. Was this all there was to his life? Sweeping floors and fixing broken sinks? But Harold never let these doubts consume him. He believed in doing his best, no matter how insignificant his role might seem. And so, day after day, he continued working, hard, smiling politely at passers-by and finding comfort in the little things. He never imagined that something extraordinary was waiting just around the corner, something that would turn his ordinary life upside down and give it a purpose he couldn't have dreamed of. It happened on a chilly October evening, not long after Halloween decorations had been taken down and replaced with signs reminding people to get flu shots. Harold was mopping the floor in the pediatric ward, a place he usually avoided because seeing sick children made him uncomfortable. There, tiny faces, pale and weary, tugged at his heartstrings in ways he couldn't explain. But tonight, the usual staff member responsible for cleaning that area was absent, so Harold stepped in to help. As he pushed the mop back and forth across the tiled floor, he noticed a little girl sitting alone by the window. She looked frail, her thin arms resting on the sill as she stared intently at the dark sky outside. Her head was wrapped in a colorful scarf, hiding the hair she had lost due to chemotherapy. Despite her fragile appearance, there was a spark in her eyes, a curiosity that seemed out of place in such a somber setting. Something about her caught Harold's attention, and without thinking, he walked closer. "What are you looking at?" Harold asked softly, trying not to startle her. The girl turned her head slightly, surprised to hear someone addressing her. For a moment, she studied him with wide, innocent eyes before answering. "I'm waiting for aliens," she said matter-of-factly, pointing toward the stars twinkling faintly in the distance. Harold blinked, unsure whether to laugh or nod seriously. Before he could respond, the girl added, "My mom says they're out there somewhere. Maybe they'll come visit Earth someday." Her words struck a chord deep within Harold. Here was this young child, battling a terrible illness, yet she still held on to hope, not just for herself but for the entire universe. There was something pure and magical about her belief, and it reminded Harold of his own childhood fascination with space. Without realizing it, he smiled warmly at her. "That's quite a thought," he said. "Do you think they'll bring us messages from other worlds?" The girl giggled, her face lighting up with excitement. "Maybe, or maybe they'll teach us how to fly among the stars." From that moment on, Harold knew his life would never be the same. This chance encounter with a brave little girl named Emily would set off a chain of events neither of them could have predicted. What started as a simple conversation under the glow of distant stars would soon grow into something far greater, a story of kindness, courage, and the power of believing in impossible dreams. After that first conversation by the window, Harold couldn't stop thinking about Emily. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, so young, yet so full of wonder and imagination. Her belief in aliens and faraway worlds seemed almost magical, like a spark of light in the darkness of her illness. Harold found himself drawn to her room more often than necessary, always finding excuses to clean nearby or check on something trivial. Each time he visited, they talked for hours about space, stars, and everything beyond Earth. Emily loved sharing her ideas with Harold. She told him stories about alien civilizations living on distant planets, describing their glowing cities and advanced technology in vivid detail. Sometimes, she even drew pictures of spaceships and extraterrestrial creatures, showing them to Harold with pride. "Wouldn't it be amazing if we could meet them?" she asked one evening, her eyes wide with excitement. Harold nodded, though deep down, he wondered how someone so sick could hold on to such hope. But instead of questioning her optimism, he chose to encourage it. Over time, Harold began bringing books and magazines about astronomy to share with Emily. He scoured the hospital library during his breaks, looking for anything related to space exploration or the mysteries of the universe. At first, he worried that the material might be too complicated for an 8-year-old, but Emily surprised him. She soaked up every word, asking questions that showed just how curious and intelligent she was. "Why is Mars red?" she asked, one day pointing to a picture in a book. "And what makes black holes so scary?" Harold did his best to explain, using simple terms and examples. "Mars is red because of iron oxide, kind of like rust," he said, smiling as he tried to make it sound fun. "And black holes are scary because they pull everything toward them, even light. Once something goes inside, it can never come back." Emily listened intently, nodding slowly as if trying to imagine these cosmic phenomena herself. Their conversations became a daily ritual, a highlight of both their days. For Harold, these moments felt special, not only because they brought joy to Emily, but also because they reignited his own passion for the stars. Despite her enthusiasm, Harold couldn't ignore the reality of Emily's condition. Every time he saw her, she seemed a little weaker, a little paler. The doctors and nurses whispered among themselves, their expressions grim. They warned her parents that her treatments weren't working as well as they had hoped. Though no one said it outright, Harold knew Emily didn't have much time left. This knowledge weighed heavily on him, filling him with a mix of sadness and determination. He wanted to give her something meaningful before it was too late, something that would remind her of the vast, beautiful universe she dreamed about. One day, while cleaning the basement storage room, Harold stumbled upon an old telescope tucked away in a dusty corner. It was covered in cobwebs and looked like it hadn't been used in years, but it still seemed intact. An idea began forming in his mind. What if he could restore the telescope and use it to show Emily the real stars? Not just pictures in books, or drawings on paper, but actual stars shining millions of miles away. Excited by the thought, Harold started researching how telescopes worked. He spent his evenings watching online tutorials and reading articles about stargazing. He learned about lenses, mirrors, and how to align the device properly. Though he had no prior experience, Harold threw himself into the project with unwavering focus. He cleaned the telescope carefully, replacing parts that were damaged and adjusting its mechanisms until it was ready to use. It wasn't easy. There were moments when he doubted his abilities, but he refused to give up. This was for Emily. Finally, after weeks of hard work, the telescope was complete. Harold tested it one clear night from the hospital rooftop, marveling at the clarity of the stars through the lens. He spotted constellations, planets, and even a faint nebula glowing softly in the distance. For the first time in years, Harold felt a sense of accomplishment, a reminder that he was capable of more than mopping floors and fixing broken sinks. The next evening, Harold wheeled the telescope into Emily's room under the pretense of showing her something special. "Close your eyes," he instructed playfully as he positioned the device near the window. When she opened them again, her face lit up with delight. "What is this?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. "It's a telescope," Harold explained. "It lets us see things in the sky that are too far away to notice with our eyes alone. Want to try?" Emily nodded eagerly, scooting closer to the eyepiece. Harold helped her adjust the focus until the image became sharp. "Look there," he said, pointing to a bright dot in the sky. "That's Jupiter, one of the biggest planets in our solar system." Emily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Wow, I can see its rings," she cried, mistaking the planet's moons for rings. Harold chuckled softly, correcting her gently. "Those aren't rings. They're moons orbiting around Jupiter. There are 4 big ones called the Galilean moons." For the next hour, Harold guided Emily through the night sky, showing her Saturn's rings, the Orion Nebula, and countless twinkling stars. Each discovery brought new exclamations of wonder from Emily. "This is incredible," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "It's like I'm flying among the stars." Watching her reaction, Harold felt a lump form in his throat. He realized that this moment meant more than just stargazing. It was a gift of hope and inspiration. For Emily, seeing the stars up close wasn't just about science. It was about believing in possibilities. It reminded her that even in the darkest times there was beauty and wonder waiting to be discovered. As the night wore on, Emily grew tired, leaning against Harold as they continued talking about the universe. "Do you think aliens really exist?" she asked sleepily, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Harold admitted honestly. "But if they do, I bet they'd love meeting someone as brave and curious as you." Emily smiled faintly, closing her eyes. "Thank you, Harold," she murmured. "This was the best night ever." In that moment, Harold knew he had done something truly extraordinary, not just for Emily but for himself as well. By reconnecting with his childhood love of space, he had found a way to make a difference in someone else's life. And though Emily's journey was far from over, Harold vowed to keep bringing her moments of magic, however brief they might be. Little did he know, this small act of kindness would set off a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond what he could imagine. The night Harold showed Emily the stars through the telescope became a turning point, not just for her but for everyone around them. Word of their stargazing adventure spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses whispered about it during their shifts, and doctors paused to smile when they saw Emily's renewed energy. Even her parents noticed a change in her. For days after that magical evening, Emily couldn't stop talking about what she had seen. "Did you know Saturn has rings?" she told anyone who would listen. "And Jupiter has moons bigger than Earth." Harold, too, felt different. Seeing Emily's joy reminded him of his own childhood dreams, the ones he had buried under years of hardship and routine. He realized that helping others experience the wonders of the universe wasn't just a fleeting act of kindness. It could be something much bigger. But how? Harold didn't have the resources or connections to make such grand ideas happen. He was just a janitor with a restored telescope and a heart full of hope. Still, Harold refused to let doubt stop him. If he could bring happiness to one child, why not more? The pediatric ward was filled with young patients like Emily, children battling illnesses that stole their strength and sometimes even their spirits. What if he could give them all a chance to escape their pain, even for a little while, by showing them the beauty of the cosmos? With this thought in mind, Harold began exploring ways to expand his idea. He started small, asking the hospital staff if they'd be willing to organize weekly stargazing sessions for the kids. To his surprise, everyone jumped at the opportunity. Nurses volunteered to help set up the telescope, and doctors adjusted their schedules to ensure the children could participate. One nurse, Mrs. Carter, even suggested reaching out to local astronomy clubs for additional support. They might have better equipment or volunteers who can teach the kids, she said enthusiastically. Encouraged by the response, Harold contacted several nearby planetariums and amateur astronomers. At first, he was nervous about approaching professionals. He worried they might dismiss him as just a janitor with an unrealistic dream. But to his relief, people were eager to help. A retired astrophysicist named Dr. Lewis offered to visit the hospital once a week to give talks about space exploration. Another group donated 2 additional telescopes, allowing multiple children to observe the sky simultaneously. Slowly but surely, Harold's vision began taking shape. Meanwhile, Emily remained at the center of everything. Her excitement inspired not only the other children but also the adults involved in the project. She became a kind of ambassador for the initiative, sharing her love for the stars with anyone who visited her room. "You should see Saturn," she exclaimed to a shy boy named Tommy, who rarely spoke to anyone. "It's like nothing you've ever seen before." Tommy hesitated at first, unsure whether to trust her enthusiasm, but eventually he joined the stargazing session and ended up staying longer than anyone else. As the weeks went by, the program grew beyond Harold's wildest expectations. More children participated, and their reactions were priceless. Some giggled with delight when they spotted craters on the moon, while others stared in silence, overwhelmed by the vastness of the universe. Parents and guardians watched from the sidelines, grateful for the brief moments of peace and wonder the program brought to their families. Even the hospital staff found themselves looking forward to the sessions, which provided a welcome break from the usual stress of their jobs. But, despite the success, Harold knew there was still more to do. Many of the sickest children couldn't leave their rooms to join the stargazing events, either because they were too weak or because their treatments required isolation. Determined to include everyone, Harold came up with a new plan: virtual tours of the night sky. Using a laptop and some basic software, he created presentations featuring images of planets, galaxies, and nebulae. He narrated each slide, explaining the science behind the pictures in simple terms. For those confined to their beds, these virtual tours became a lifeline, a way to explore the universe without leaving their rooms. One evening, as Harold prepared for another virtual tour, Emily approached him with a question that caught him off guard. "Do you think astronauts ever feel scared?" she asked softly. Harold paused, thinking carefully before answering. "I think they must," he said finally. "Space is unpredictable, and there are so many unknowns. But I also think they're brave enough to face their fears because they believe in the mission, the importance of exploring and learning." Emily nodded thoughtfully, her gaze drifting toward the window. "I want to be brave like that," she whispered. Her words stayed with Harold long after she returned to her bed. They reminded him of the resilience these children possessed, despite their struggles. And they reinforced his determination to keep pushing forward, to make sure every child in the hospital felt a sense of wonder and possibility, no matter how dire their circumstances. Around this time, something unexpected happened. A local news station heard about the stargazing program and decided to feature it in a segment. Reporters interviewed Harold, Emily, and several other participants, capturing footage of the children marveling at the stars through telescopes. When the story aired, It touched hearts across the city. Viewers flooded the station with messages of gratitude, praising Harold and the hospital staff for their creativity and compassion. Donations poured in from individuals and organizations, eager to support the initiative. Within days, the program had gained national attention. NASA even reached out, offering educational materials and videos recorded by astronauts aboard the International Space Station, ISS. One day, Harold received an email inviting the hospital to host a live video call with the ISS crew. The idea seemed almost unbelievable. How could a janitor from a modest hospital arrange such a monumental event? Yet with the help of countless volunteers and supporters, Harold pulled it off. On the day of the video call, the entire pediatric ward gathered in the activity room, buzzing with anticipation. As the screen flickered to life and the smiling faces of astronauts appeared, the room erupted into cheers. The astronauts answered questions from the children, describing what it was like to float in zero gravity and gaze down at Earth from space. Emily raised her hand eagerly, asking, "What's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen up there?" The astronaut smiled warmly. "The Earth itself," he replied. "From here, our planet looks peaceful and fragile, a reminder of how precious it is." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she listened. For a moment, she forgot about her illness and the limitations of her body. She imagined herself floating among the stars, free and weightless, surrounded by endless possibilities. Harold watched her closely, his heart swelling with pride. He knew this experience would stay with her forever, a memory to carry with her wherever life took her next. By now, Harold's efforts had transformed not only the lives of the children, but also his own. People began calling him the Star, Janitor, though Harold insisted he was simply doing what anyone else would do if given the chance. Despite the growing recognition, he remained humble and focused on his original goal, making Emily's remaining days as magical as possible. Together they planned bigger events, dreaming of ways to bring the universe closer to those who needed it most. Little did Harold know, his journey was far from over. What started as a personal mission to brighten one girl's life had grown into something extraordinary, a movement that would inspire countless others and leave a lasting legacy. And as he gazed at the night sky one evening, reflecting on how far he'd come, Harold realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can spark the brightest stars. The stargazing program at St. Mary's Hospital continued to grow, touching more lives than Harold could have ever imagined. What had started as a simple act of kindness between a janitor and a sick little girl had blossomed into a nationwide phenomenon. The media attention brought in donations, volunteers, and partnerships that allowed the initiative to reach new heights. But for Harold, the true measure of success wasn't in the money or recognition. It was in the smiles of the children who looked through telescopes, the awe in their eyes as they learned about distant galaxies, and the gratitude of families desperate for moments of joy amidst unimaginable challenges. One of the most transformative developments came when NASA partnered with the hospital to create an ongoing educational series specifically designed for young patients. Astronauts from the International Space Station, ISS, began sending personalized messages and videos to the children, sharing stories of their missions and answering questions submitted by the kids. These interactions weren't just inspiring, they were life-changing. For children confined to hospital beds, hearing directly from astronauts made the vast, mysterious universe feel within reach. It reminded them that even though their bodies were limited, their imaginations could soar across the stars. Emily remained the heart and soul of the program. Her energy and curiosity inspired everyone around her, from the youngest patients to the oldest doctors. She became a symbol of hope, not only for the children at St. Mary's, but also for people watching the news segments or reading articles about the initiative. Strangers wrote letters to the hospital, thanking Emily and Harold for reminding them of the beauty in the world. Some sent handmade cards decorated with drawings of spaceships and planets, while others donated telescopes, books, and funds to support the cause. Despite her declining health, Emily embraced her role as the face of the movement with grace and determination. She worked closely with Harold to plan events, suggest activities, and ensure every child felt included. One of her favorite ideas was organizing space nights, where the entire pediatric ward would gather in the activity room to watch documentaries about space exploration. During these evenings, the lights were dimmed, and glow-in-the-dark stars were stuck to the ceiling to mimic the night sky. Nurses dressed up as astronauts, and volunteers handed out snacks shaped like rockets and moons. The laughter and excitement in the room were contagious, filling the usually sterile environment with warmth and wonder. As word of the program spread, other hospitals began reaching out to Harold for advice on starting similar initiatives. At first he hesitated. He didn't see himself as an expert, but eventually he agreed to share what he had learned. With the help of Dr. Lewis, the retired astrophysicist, and Mrs. Carter, the nurse who had supported him from the beginning, Harold created a step-by-step guide for setting up stargazing programs. They included tips on acquiring equipment, organizing events, and making the experience accessible to children with varying needs. Within months, dozens of hospitals across the country adopted the model, creating their own versions of space, nights, and virtual tours of the cosmos. But perhaps the most unexpected outcome of the program was its impact on the adults involved. Doctors, nurses, and staff members found themselves reconnecting with the reasons they had chosen careers in healthcare: to make a difference in people's lives. The stargazing sessions reminded them that medicine wasn't just about treating illnesses. It was also about nurturing hope, creativity, and resilience. Even visitors to the hospital noticed the change. Families waiting anxiously for updates on loved ones often stopped to watch the children marvel at the stars, finding comfort in their laughter and enthusiasm. For Harold, seeing the ripple effects of his efforts filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He realized that his small act of kindness had sparked something much larger, a chain reaction of compassion and inspiration. Yet, despite the growing success, Harold never lost sight of why he had started this journey in the first place: Emily. Every event, every donation, and every smile was a testament to her courage and imagination. However, as much as Harold tried to focus on the positive, he couldn't ignore the reality of Emily's condition. Her illness was progressing rapidly, and the treatments were no longer effective. Doctors warned her parents that she might not have much time left. Though Harold tried to remain optimistic, he couldn't shake the feeling of impending loss. He wanted to give Emily one last unforgettable experience, something that would let her touch the stars she loved so dearly. With the help of the hospital staff and NASA, Harold arranged a special event just for Emily. They set up a private screening of a documentary filmed aboard the ISS, complete with footage of Earth from space and interviews with astronauts. To make the occasion even more magical, they decorated the room with fairy lights and projected images of constellations onto the walls. As Emily lay in her bed, surrounded by glowing stars and the hum of voices from outer space, she smiled faintly. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I can almost feel it." Harold sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "You're already there, Emily," he said softly. "In your heart, you've always been among the stars." His words brought tears to the eyes of everyone present, doctors, nurses, and family members alike. In that moment, no one thought of Emily as a terminally ill child. Instead, they saw her as a dreamer, an adventurer, and a beacon of light in the darkest of times. Though Emily's days were numbered, her spirit lived on through the program she had helped create. Her story inspired countless others to look beyond their limitations and embrace the wonders of the universe. Parents thanked Harold for giving their children a reason to smile during difficult times, while teachers incorporated lessons about space into their curriculums, encouraging students to think big and dream boldly. Even strangers who had never met Emily or Harold felt moved by their story, vowing to spread kindness in their own communities. As the weeks passed, Harold reflected on how much his life had changed since meeting Emily. Before her, he had been content living in the shadows, unnoticed and unremarkable. But now he understood that greatness wasn't defined by wealth or fame. It was measured by the impact you had on others. By simply caring enough to restore an old telescope and share the night sky with a dying girl, Harold had ignited a movement that transcended borders and generations. Emily's final days were peaceful, filled with love and memories of the stars she adored. She passed away quietly in her sleep, leaving behind a legacy of hope and wonder. Though her absence left a void in Harold's heart, he knew she wouldn't want him to stop helping others. Inspired by her courage, he vowed to continue expanding the program, ensuring that her dream of bringing the universe to sick children would live on forever. In the months that followed, Harold founded a non-profit organization dedicated to bringing the wonders of the cosmos to hospitals, schools, and orphanages worldwide. Named Emily's Stars, the organization provided resources, training, and equipment to communities eager to inspire their youth. Thousands of children experienced the magic of the universe, thanks to Harold's efforts, each one carrying a piece of Emily's spirit with them. Looking back on his journey, Harold realized how much Emily had changed him. She had reignited his passion for learning and taught him the power of simple acts of kindness. Though she was gone, her influence lingered. In the twinkle of a star, the laughter of a child, and the endless possibilities of the human imagination. And as Harold gazed at the night sky once more, now older and wiser, he smiled. Somewhere among the stars, he believed Emily was still watching, cheering him on. Because in her short life, she had shown him and the world that even the smallest lights could shine brightly in the darkest corners of the universe. Years passed, and Harold's life transformed in ways he could never have predicted. What began as a quiet act of kindness, a janitor restoring an old telescope for a dying girl, had grown into a global movement that touched millions of lives. Emily's Stars, the non-profit organization Harold founded in Emily's memory, became synonymous with hope, wonder, and the power of imagination. From remote villages in Africa to bustling cities in Asia, children everywhere looked up at the night sky with newfound curiosity thanks to Harold's efforts. Yet, despite the accolades and recognition, Harold remained humble, always crediting Emily for inspiring everything. Harold often thought about Emily during quiet moments, especially on clear nights when the stars seemed particularly bright. He remembered her laughter, her boundless curiosity, and the way she had believed so fiercely in the impossible. Though she was no longer physically present, Harold felt her spirit alive in every child who marveled at Saturn's rings or dreamed of visiting distant galaxies. In those moments, Harold truly understood what it meant to leave a legacy, not through wealth or fame, but through acts of love and compassion that outlasted a single lifetime. The years hadn't been easy for Harold. Running Emily's Stars required endless energy, patience, and sacrifice. There were days when funding fell short, volunteers dropped out, or logistical challenges threatened to derail entire projects. But Harold persevered, driven by the memory of Emily and the countless faces of children whose lives had been changed by the program. Each success, no matter how small, reminded him why he kept going. Whether it was a handwritten thank you note from a grateful parent or a shy smile from a child pointing at the moon through a telescope, these moments fueled his determination. One of the most rewarding aspects of Emily's Stars was its ability to unite people from all walks of life. Scientists, teachers, artists, and ordinary citizens came together to support the cause, each contributing their unique skills and talents. Amateur astronomers volunteered their telescopes and expertise, while educators developed interactive lessons to make complex concepts accessible to young minds. Artists painted murals of constellations on hospital walls, turning sterile spaces into vibrant sanctuaries of wonder. Even astronauts continued to play a role, sending messages and videos from space to inspire the next generation of dreamers. As the program expanded, Harold traveled extensively, visiting schools, hospitals, and community centers around the world. Everywhere he went, he shared Emily's story, emphasizing the importance of believing in something greater than oneself. She taught me that even in the darkest times, there is light to be found, if we're willing to look for it, he would say during speeches. His words resonated deeply with audiences, many of whom had faced hardships of their own. Teachers reported that students who participated in Emily's Stars programs showed increased interest in science and technology, while parents noticed improvements in their children's confidence and outlook on life. But perhaps the most profound impact of the program was its ability to foster connection. Children battling illnesses or living in challenging circumstances often felt isolated, as if they were alone in their struggles. Emily's stars gave them a sense of belonging to a community of dreamers, explorers, and believers. Parents frequently remarked that the program helped their children see themselves not as victims of circumstance, but as part of something vast and beautiful. One mother wrote to Harold saying, "Before Emily's stars, my son thought the universe didn't care about him. Now he knows he's part of it, and that makes all the difference." Despite his achievements, Harold never sought personal glory. He refused interviews with major networks and declined invitations to prestigious events unless they directly benefited the program. Instead, he preferred to stay behind the scenes, quietly working to ensure that every child had access to the tools and resources needed to explore the cosmos. To Harold, the true heroes were the children themselves. Their resilience, creativity, and unwavering belief in the magic of the universe inspired him daily. As Harold grew older, he began thinking about the future of Emily's stars. He knew the organization couldn't rely solely on him forever. With the help of trusted colleagues and advisors, he established a board of directors to oversee operations and ensure its sustainability. Among the members was Tommy, the once shy boy who had joined one of Harold's earliest stargazing sessions. Now a young man studying astrophysics in college, Tommy credited Harold and Emily for sparking his passion for space exploration. "They showed me that the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning," Tommy said during his first meeting with the board. His presence filled Harold with pride and reassurance that the program was in capable hands. In his later years, Harold returned to St. Mary's Hospital where it all began. The pediatric ward had undergone significant renovations since his days as a janitor, but the essence of the place remained unchanged. Nurses still bustled through the halls, doctors worked tirelessly to save lives, and children laughed and played, despite their illnesses. Standing in the activity room where he had hosted countless stargazing sessions, Harold felt a deep sense of gratitude. This hospital had been the birthplace of a dream that had touched the world, and he owed it all to a brave little girl named Emily. On one of his visits, Harold met a young patient named Lily, who reminded him so much of Emily. She was 10 years old, battling cancer and obsessed with aliens and UFOs. When Harold introduced himself and offered to show her the stars through a telescope, her eyes lit up with excitement. "Do you think aliens are watching us right now?" she asked, echoing Emily's question from years ago. Harold smiled warmly, feeling a lump form in his throat. "I like to think so," he replied. "And if they are, I bet they're amazed by how incredible humans can be." That evening, as Harold sat on a bench outside the hospital, gazing at the stars, he reflected on his journey. From a lonely janitor mopping floors to a global advocate for wonder and discovery, Harold's life had taken twists and turns he could never have anticipated. Through it all, Emily had been his guiding light, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples that reached far beyond what anyone could imagine. As the years turned into decades, Harold's body grew frail, but his spirit remained strong. He spent his final days surrounded by loved ones and memories of Emily, knowing that his work would continue long after he was gone. On the night he passed away, the skies above the city were unusually clear, dotted with countless stars shining brightly against the velvet darkness. Friends and family gathered to honor his memory, sharing stories of how Harold had changed their lives. Among them was Tommy, now a respected astrophysicist leading groundbreaking research on exoplanets. Holding back tears, he addressed the crowd. "Harold taught us that the universe isn't just out there, it's inside each of us. Every time we look up at the stars, we carry a piece of him with us. And somewhere among those stars, I believe, Emily and Harold are together, smiling down at us." Though Harold was gone, his legacy endured. Emily's stars continued to thrive, reaching new generations of dreamers and explorers. Schools named observatories after him, and communities celebrated annual festivals dedicated to astronomy and wonder. Children across the globe looked up at the night sky, imagining themselves among the stars, thanks to the janitor who dared to believe in the impossible. And so, Harold's story became more than just a tale of kindness. It became a testament to the enduring power of hope, the beauty of human connection, and the infinite possibilities of the universe. Somewhere beyond the horizon, amid the twinkling constellations, Emily and Harold watched over the world they had helped transform. Their light shone brightly, reminding everyone that even in the darkest corners of existence, there is always a reason to dream, and always a star waiting to guide the way.